display when condition is true. Condition is true. And else, so it comprises of content. Comprises of content. Content to display. To display when condition is false. When condition is false. Is false. Actually, it uses a traditional legacy syntax. Traditional legacy syntax for if is if condition, then we have to write a statement if true. Statement if true. And else we have to write statement if false. This is the traditional way actually. Statement if false. This is the traditional syntax. Mostly this type of syntax you can see. Mostly this type of syntax you can see. This type of syntax you can see in languages like VB, Visual Basic, VB script like things. So that is the traditional syntax we follow actually. So the same thing we need to configure here. And how do we deal with these blocks? Actually, syntax is on true one value, on false another value. That means generally what we do is we keep a div or any container. We write ngIF is equal to. So if it is condition is true, if the condition is true, if the condition is true, so then we put a semicolon. We put a semicolon, and then we will write the then block and we access the else block. That's how we need to configure. Okay, first we will write the blocks, then we will see here. See, it is having Boolean, true or false. Then we close the div here. Actually, we have two templates here. So ng template. This have an ID hash then block. That is an ID. That means so this is the code if true. If true, this block should display. Then we use ng template. And we have another template. We have ng template. So this is having ID else block. And this usually happens if false. And we need to keep this here ng template. So these are the two blocks we are having. And when to display these blocks, that you have to write in the directive. That means here above in the div, we need to configure in this way. If it is true, then we have to configure like this. So first condition. So that means actually we have to write a condition, Boolean condition. And we have to define then we have to use the keyword then, and then block. We have to call then block, and else we have to call else block. That's how we need to write. That means based on this Boolean condition, if the Boolean condition is true, then the then block will be added. Else, the else block will be added. That is how we have to configure the statement. So that is the two important attributes. And based on that, we can conditionally handle the situation. Example, we will see how we can work with that example. But traditionally, how it works, one simple point I will show you. So that means traditionally how it is going to handle that. Means how do we write actually the syntax. So let's see one simple option, how we can traditionally write the syntax. So for that first one, so what we need to do is we need to so we need to do so we need to handle so one simple point. So let's write the simple example for that. How do we handle this? So just I will show you a block statement here. I'll show you a block statement here. Okay. So let's keep a div here. Outside, I'm just adding a div just to understand the example. So later we will keep in proper example. How to handle that, we will see in a proper example. So here what we are doing is we are just adding. So we are just adding a condition. So this is one. And this div have an if. So ngIF. ngIF. And here we are using two templates, ng template. This template, so let's keep a name for this template. Just basically this template is having a name. So that means it should have a reference ID. That means we can define a reference ID, hash, then block. Okay, that is the ID for that. And here we are using some display. I want to display so statement if true. Statement if true. We have another ng template, and this is defined as else block. And this is statement if false. Statement if false. So these are the blocks that we have configured. Now we need to use these blocks. We need to configure these blocks. So how do we are defining? Is initially when you look at these two blocks are to display the content inside them. So currently those two blocks, I will copy, remove here. Those two blocks don't have any display because they will display only based on the condition. So that means if condition is true, then semicolon, I will use the then attribute. Then it has to call the then block, and else it has to call the else block. That's how we need to configure. So that is how we have to define. That Boolean can be a condition. That Boolean can be a Boolean value, condition or Boolean value. And based on the Boolean value, you can display and handle it. So now you see in the output, usually what happens in the output is when you go into the output and see the output here. So it needs to display. I will save this. So it needs to display. So a block based on the condition you have defined. So it needs to display the block based on the condition you define. So it needs to display the block. You can see statement if true is there. Statement if true because we have defined it. So generally the statement if true because it is satisfying with the true. If I define false and save this, usually this false should execute the else block, and display the else block, and you can see statement if false will